Hi, folks. My name is Josh McKelvin. I'm the moderator of this evening's debate. A couple of rules of the road. First, let me welcome you to New England College on behalf of the President's Office, Dr. Wayne Lesperance, the administration, student body, faculty, board of trustees, for the first district congressional debate, primary debate between the Republican candidates. We have 5 candidates on stage tonight. We're going to introduce them briefly in just a moment. But first, I'm sure you guys know the decorum for being at a debate. You know, no flash photography, silence your cell phones, try to hold your applause or boos or whatever you want to do until the end of the debate. But we're also going to be introducing the candidates, so feel free to clap for the one that you're rooting for. And if you're undecided, it's up to you. So we're going to get started in just a moment. I'm going to introduce you to the panelists before the candidates. We have Kevin Landrigan, the union leader, Melanie Plenda. Yeah. Take a bow, Kevin. Melanie Plenda from the Granite State News Collaborative. And Jeff Chittister from WFEA Morning Report. So, they'll be asking the questions. 1 minute away. All right, everyone, welcome to New England College and Live Free or Die primary debates for the first Congressional District primary with Republican candidates. Let's get this thing started. We do have 5 candidates tonight. Let's start the introductions, starting with Walter McFarland. He's running for Congress after a 25-year career in business, gaining experience in everything from construction, manufacturing, social media, and professional sports. Walter lives in Manchester. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Josh.
Our next candidate is Chris Bright. Chris is a graduate of West Point, decorated combat veteran, entrepreneur, business executive. Bright promises that in Congress he will always put country first. Chris also lives in Derry. Our next candidate, Joe Kelly Levasseur. He's an attorney who started his career in politics in the year 2000 when elected alderman for the city of Manchester. He has won 7 consecutive terms, now serves as the chairman of the Board of Aldermen. He was born and raised in Manchester, still lives there with his wife and 2 children. Let's welcome Joe Kelly. Our next candidate, Russell Prescott. He has served 5 terms as a New Hampshire state senator, being first elected in 2000. He served 2 years on the executive council as well. Russell Prescott's a businessman who resides in Kingston with his wife. The couple has five children with 8 grandchildren.
Correct.
Welcome, Mr. Prescott. And last but certainly not least, Holly Novoletsky is an author, businesswoman, Army Reserve veteran. Thank you for your service, and you as well, Mr. Bright, as well as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Seacoast Republican got into this race saying, quote, "It is time for new blood in Washington, D.C." All right, so with those introductions out of the way, it's time for our opening statements. We begin with Walter McFarland, sir. Take it away.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, NEC, for having us here, and thank you all for being here. I'm a proud son of an amazing 2 parents who served Manchester for years. One is an orthodontist, one is a mental health counselor. Mom is here tonight, and Dad is never far from my thoughts. I'm a businessman. I've turned companies around, taking them out of debt and creating hundreds of jobs. I get into the race because I wasn't hearing a message that spoke to me, a message that I thought could win in November. I'm a Republican that thinks America is still great. I'm a small government conservative. I believe in strong defense, closed borders, the rule of law, a strong economy free of excessive regulation. But small government also must mean letting people live the lives they choose. We need to stop pushing people away and start working with a laser focus on the issues that affect us every day, like inflation and housing. I will represent all of us and bring balance back to Washington.
Thank you, sir. Chris Bright, your opening statement, please.
I'm Chris Bright. I'm not a politician. I'm a West Point graduate, combat veteran, businessman, and a father. I didn't come from money. I never had anything handed to me. But I built the fastest growing private company in New Hampshire. I got in the race for Congress for one simple reason. Everywhere I looked, I saw failure. I saw policy failure. I saw political dysfunction. And I saw an appalling lack of leadership. I thought to myself, we can do better than this. You know, and like you, I felt the cynicism. I felt the frustration. And I'm here to tell you, you could change that story at any time. I've done it myself. A lot of you know my story. We could start by making life more affordable for everyday Americans. We can do better at securing the border. And we can do better at getting cops or criminals and drug dealers off our streets. But we can't do it without effective, tested leadership. Chris Pappas is not that. He's not a leader. He's a follower and a Democratic rubber stamp. And we need to take that back. I can do better. The future's bright. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Joe Kelly Lavasser, your opening statement, sir.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for the panel to show up today, and thank you for everybody in the audience that took their time out to come out here today. My name is Joseph Kelly Lavasser. Currently, I am a 7-straight-term alderman at large in the city of Manchester, the biggest blue city in the state. I've been elected 7 times as a Republican because I tell people exactly what's going on in the city of Manchester. I don't sugarcoat anything. I've been on boards where there's only been 2 Republicans out of a total of 15. I know what it's like to be on the minority side. And what I've witnessed with what's going on in Washington, D.C. is beyond anything I've ever witnessed before. Lawfare, spending, deficits, war all over this world. We don't need to be involved in all of that. We need to take care of this country. We need to take care of our own citizens, and we need to take care of America first.
Thank you, sir. Up next, Russell Prescott.
Yes, I'm Russell Prescott, and the reason why I'm in this race is to defeat Chris Pappas this November. The mic is going bad, is it? Thank you.
I don't know.
I don't know, maybe?
Sounds like it.
Sounds good?
There you go.
All right. The reason why I'm running for this office is to defeat Chris Pappas this fall. He has, I'm sorry, I don't think it's working, so I'll put it up like this. He has come to our state, and he has said that we got to stop all this immigration coming in over the border. Thank you.
Sorry. Start over.
I'm starting over again, third time. Third time's a charm. I do appreciate it. I'm running because Chris Pappas has failed us at the border. We need to have someone that comes to New Hampshire and says what he has done to secure our border, not come to New Hampshire and say, we can't have all of this immigration coming in over the border, and had for the past 3 years done nothing really substantial to accomplish security at our border. We need a candidate that does not want to take our election rights away from us when he goes to Washington, D.C. and votes the wrong way on making the federal government in charge of state elections. We do need someone that has the experience of being in the state Senate, and that's myself, and on the Executive Council. We need someone that has stood up for New Hampshire and made sure that we did not have an income tax or a sales tax. We need someone that has won and gotten the trust of the independent voter. When I ran against Maggie Hassan to defeat the income tax, we won because we had the right message. We still have the right message today. We need to work hard to unite the party. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And our final opening statement comes from Holly Novoletsky.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here and having the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Holly Novoletsky. I'm the owner and CEO of a structural steel fabrication company, Novel Ironworks, also an erection company. We provide erection and structural steel throughout New England, and I employ over 100 people. I'm also a psychiatric and a geriatric nurse practitioner, and I've spent my life caring for people with dementia. And many of you have heard my joke, but there is a need for me in D.C. And my father has always said, We no longer need an MBA in business. We need a psych degree because it's all about talking to people. And lastly, I spent 8 years in the Army Reserve Nurse Corps and 2 years in the New Hampshire National Guard. But what I'm not is I'm not a politician. I'm not going to pander to any of you. I'm going to look you in the eye, tell you what I think, and do what I say, because you as a voter have a right to know where I stand. You as a voter have a right to know who you're voting for. And I look forward to discussing all the topics that we will tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we're going to hold our applause now until the end of the debate. Thanks for rolling with technical difficulties, particularly you, Mr. Prescott. Let's go to our first question from the panelists. Jeff Chittister has a question focused on Congress approval. We'll start with Ms. Novuletsky.
According to Pew Research, 86% of Americans believe that the Republicans and Democrats are more interested in fighting each other than solving problems. Congressional job approval ratings are at an all-time low. If elected, how can the people of the First District trust that you won't be more of the same?
Thank you for that question. Politics is about trust. Well, it should be about trust. It has not been. As a business owner, I know how to come to the table and communicate and negotiate. We need to be able to come to a common understanding, and that's only through trust and open communication. And that's why it's very important that you know that I am not going to pander to people. And it's also important to find like-minded people in Congress, not the ones that are standing in front of the camera asking for their 5 minutes of fame, but the ones who are rolling up their sleeves every day and doing the hard work. And they are there. When I got the opportunity to go to D.C., I met one that was from Iowa. You don't see her name, Marion Miller Meeks, but she's there every day working very hard for her people, doing the hard work. So you find that group of people and you work closely with them, and that's how you do it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Mr. Prescott, same question.
Well, thank you. The reason why I'm running in this race is because in the past, there have been just negative infighting in the primary for those who want to be the nominee to run up against Chris Pappas. 2 years ago, in a debate, I said, you know, if we could just get along, we could accomplish a lot. So I have maintained that I would never negative campaign for this seat, for the purpose of being able to unite the party behind a great candidate. I have contacted hundreds of people over the last 2 years to unite the party, all the way from endorsements from Al Baldessaro to former Speaker of the House, Doug Scammon. The very broad part of the party to make sure that we can win in November. The latest poll showed that I was up in the polls of the University of New Hampshire poll, and it was because of 3 things. Independent voters, the majority are voting for me. Self-proclaimed libertarians are voting for me, and independents are voting for me because of my record of being positive and saying what I'm going to do.
Got to wrap up.
And do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Mr. Levasseur.
Well, there'd be a lot less fighting if the Democrats just listened to common sense and did what the Republicans asked. It's an adversarial process, just like in court. I've been an attorney for over 23 years, and when we go to court, we argue our positions. So people think that we're fighting over principle, or we're fighting over what we believe is right, and the Democrats are fighting for what they think is right. And we have a very big chasm in this country and a divide, because they're taking us down one path towards socialism, and the Republicans want to take them down the right path, which is what has made this country so great, is capitalism. The ability to be able to rise from your station, no matter where you are in this world, in this country, to be able to rise yourself up. I grew up in the projects. I owned a restaurant at 25 for 34 and a half years, and I became an attorney, and I've been elected 8 times. This is what America's about, and this is what we're fighting about. So hopefully the Democrats are going to finally get the message when this election is over and we win some seats, and they'll come to their senses and come join with us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bright, same question.
It is about trust. And I think Americans are tired of career politicians. And by politicians, it's not just the people that walk the halls of a state house, but also writing swampy pay-to-play checks. It's people that are giving themselves an unfair advantage by being in that position of power. And that has eroded Americans' confidence in our elected officials. In order to get back and start to unite this country, which I do believe is one of our biggest issues at this point, above all of our other issues that we talk about, it's about establishing trust. And at West Point, I was taught that you don't wear your rank for personal gain. You wear it to advance the mission of the people you're honored and entrusted with leading. And when you're not there doing that, then people don't want to hear what you have to say. So it's about putting the needs of the country first. In the Army, we call that selfless service. It's about taking care of the people that are looking to you for leadership, and then it's about doing what you say you're going to do and not just talking about it.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. And finally, Mr. McFarland, why are you the one to break the gridlock and get along and problem solve?
Well, it is about doing what you say you're going to do. But the reason Congress's approval rating is so low is because they get nothing done. And the reason they get nothing done right now is because we've sent nothing but people on the far right and far left down there. All the moderates have left. We need some moderates to help bridge the aisle. It doesn't mean we abandon the ideals we hold dear, but it does mean that we reach across the aisle. As all my fellow opponents can attest to, every time I see them at an event, I go up to them, I shake their hand, I say hello, I wish them well. It's not enough to be right and have the right views. You have to have the right temperament. You have to be willing to work with people, and to do that, you have to talk to them and about them with some degree of respect, even if they disagree with you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next question coming from Melanie Plender from the Granite State News Collaborative.
Hi.
Starting with Mr. McFarland.
So, with the growing debate around abortion restrictions, where do you stand on potential federal legislation that would impose abortion bans? And do you support invoking the Comstock Act to restrict medical abortions and other reproductive health services delivered by mail? And also, how would you address concerns about access to reproductive health care, particularly in rural areas of New Hampshire?
Thank you for that question. There's a lot there, and I hope I can get through it in 60 seconds. First on the topic of abortion, and my view has never changed on this, and I'm not relying just on it's a state's issue and it's back at the states. I've never felt that the government has any place in telling someone what to do and how to live their life and what choices to make. Now, I believe New Hampshire gets it right. I'm a person of faith. I'm a Catholic. I believe New Hampshire gets it right, that at 24 weeks, at a point of viability, that's a different standard, unless, of course, there's fetal viability or health of the mother at stake. In terms of access to reproductive care, IVF and all those things, we have to make sure that no laws that we pass, whether at the state or federal level, interferes with a couple who wants to have children being able to follow any practice they want to have children and to build a family.
Mr. Lavasser.
Oh,
Same question.
Oh, okay.
You
Nice
got to
skip.
stay on your toes.
Nice
You never know where I'm
skip.
going to go.
That was good. I appreciate that. I'm not going to Congress to fight about abortion. I'm going to Congress to reduce that deficit. I'm going to Congress to get us out of world wars. I'm going to Congress to get our country back. I'm going to Congress to, get the wall built and stop this massive inflow of illegal immigration into our country. The Supreme Court punted that to the states, and that's where I want it to stay. I have no the fact that we talk about abortion as much as we do, it just puts everything that's really wrong with this country into a different perspective. $36 trillion in debt, and everyone wants to talk about abortion. The cracks in our economy are showing every single day. 1 million jobs lost, they just revised it. Today we're learning there's another 500,000. The cracks are there. The economy is going to tank. You need Republicans down there to lower tax rates, to bring more business into this country, get rid of regulations. Abortion is a state issue. That's where it will stay, for me.
Ms. Novoletsky.
Thank you. As Republicans, we can't be afraid to engage in the discussion of abortion because the Democrats are using it as a weapon. They're fear-mongering. We need to be able to engage. And as a nurse practitioner who's worked at the end of life for most of my career, I see the sanctity of life at both ends. But I do believe the Supreme Court got it right by giving it back to the state, so I would not support a federal ban. It needs to stay at the state. As far as mail order prescriptions, there's always a risk with prescriptions, and I think it needs to be carefully looked at for regulation. And as far as rural health, we have a crisis in this country in healthcare, access, cost, and staffing, and we need to address that. New Hampshire has done a good job with some of the bills that they passed to help with staffing, but we need to loosen up our insurance so that we can have more insurance carriers. We need to fund rural health, not Planned Parenthood, as one of my opponents has done. Planned Parenthood does not provide primary care. We need to provide primary care in the rural health settings in the underserved.
Mr. Prescott, you agree with what you just heard?
I do not. I believe that when you have the Constitution as the oath of office when it comes to funding sexual transmitted disease testing, we owe it to our people to make sure that that funding gets done. When I was in the Executive Council, that's what came before the Executive Council. It came from the Trump administration to fund STD testing. It came to the Sununu Prescott administration as an executive of the New Hampshire. And I made sure that I didn't show prejudice and I did not show any animosity towards any candidate that was qualified to receive funding for sexual transmitted diseases. That oath of office is what separates us from a democracy which can take away your votes by a single vote. What I really am upset about is the fact that Chris Pappas does not stand up to the president and say, enforce the laws that you're supposed to enforce. That's what I did when I did my votes for sexually transmitted disease testing. And Chris Pappas, you need to stand up to our president and say, enforce the laws at the border. Solve that problem immediately.
And finally, Mr. Bright on same topic, same question.
Yeah, look, with abortion and any polarized topic for that matter, 1,000 years from now, we could still be in this exact same spot talking about this because both sides of the abortion issue look at this from completely diametrically opposed worldviews. So the best way to deal with these types of issues is to have it as close as you can to an electorate. That's why the Dobbs was a good decision, because it took it out of the federal level and it put it at a state level. And so if that's something that you're passionate about and you care about, you have more of a say. So we've been rebranded by the Democratic Party as if we're against women's rights. We're not. We're not. We want you to have more of a say in what you do with your body. I think it's good where it sits right now in New Hampshire. I will never support any type of federal legislation restricting abortion. And where it sits right now, I am 100% comfortable with.
Thank you, sir. Back to our panel, Kevin Landrigan, the union leader on election integrity.
Recently, Donald Trump backed off his repeated claims that the 2020 election was stolen, saying instead he lost by a whisker. Do you believe the outcome in 2020 was legitimate? And did Mike Pence do the right thing when he certified Joe Biden's victory?
Mr. Bright.
I can't believe we're still talking about this. And no offense for the question, but here we are months away from a new election 4 years later. The American people will speak. Now, we looked at the election, and let's be honest, during COVID, the Democrats changed the rules of the game while we were playing it. And as a result, Joe Biden had that advantage. Like, that's a fact. And we recognize that we had different type of exposure in our electorate system. But was there mass fraud? I'm not buying that. So if you're unhappy with the government, if you're unhappy with this disastrous leadership, then go out and vote differently. Stop putting career politicians in. Stop voting for a disastrous another 4 years, and let's just move on. Because hanging around, talking about what happened 4 years ago is 4 years ago.
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. This is very near and dear to my heart. As a state senator, I was the prime sponsor of our voter ID law that is intact today. It stood up to a constitutional muster, and it was enforced the very year that the law was passed. That's what I do when I get to the public service, is I roll up my sleeves, I find solutions to problems, and I get to work and I get it done. This is what we need in Washington, D.C. What Chris Pappas is trying to do is take away those rights from us and bring them over to the federal government. We cannot have that. And in terms of what Mike Pence did, it's very similar to what I did in this as an executive council. I had to approve the vote counts of our state. We have paper ballots to document every single vote that runs through a machine. The machines give us the technology to know right away what the outcome is, and we can trust those machines only as far as we can confirm that they're doing the right thing. That's where I stand.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McFarland, do you believe that the 2020 election was legitimate?
I do. The election was not stolen. There was not enough going on to materially change the outcome. Mike Pence absolutely did the right thing by certifying that election. He is not my favorite politician, but he stood up on that day and prevented what I believe could have been a constitutional crisis. And in terms of the result, if we stay on message, if we talk about our policies that are clearly better than the Democrats, that when it comes to security, when it comes to the economy, we win elections by 10 points, 15 points. They can't be stolen from us if we win by as much as we should win if we run the elections the right way. And instead of crying about that election in December of 2020, we should have been down in Georgia, winning those 2 Senate runoff seats. We would have had the majority in the Senate, the majority in both houses, and none of the stuff that's happened in the last 4 years would have happened.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Novoletsky, same question.
Stolen's a strong word. I would definitely say that there were some massive irregularities in the voting. For instance, we changed the rules. There was massive mailing of ballots. We found down in Virginia 6,300 illegal voters on the registry. Over 80,000 people who had either moved or died on the voter registry. So there are some irregularities there that we need to be careful of. I have a friend here in New Hampshire. Husband was deceased 20 years. We recently received a mail-in ballot. Another person who had moved into a house, the previous owners were long gone, received a ballot for the previous owners. So there are some irregularities that we need to be careful of. And the fact that Chris Pappas voted against the SAVE Act, which would have required citizenship, proof of citizenship to vote in our elections, is a shame. We need to address that. As far as...
I'm sorry, continue.
Okay, sorry. And as far as Pence, I think he did what he had to do.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And finally, Mr. Levasseur.
The trust in government, our administrations, our bureaucracies is at an all-time low. COVID came and the world went into a deep crisis over many issues. Mail-in balloting really is not a good idea. Coming out of an election and you lose a race by 5, 10 votes. I've been involved in politics for 25 years. I can't tell you how many times I've been involved in a recount election. People lose by 5, 6, 7 votes. And as a registrar in Manchester, I actually have to make the decisions on those votes. People need to trust that we are doing it the right way. New Hampshire does. We have paper ballots, we have machines, and I've been involved in many, many recounts. And those numbers very, very rarely change, and if they do, they're by small numbers. There are a lot of questions about that election, and I think a lot of them are correct to ask. We have a right to ask questions. You know, the Democrats, to their credit, went out and changed a lot of laws through the courts. And that's not the process that was in place at the time. We were supposed to be able to go through and do it through our legislature.
We've got to wrap this up.
So the questions surrounding that election will be asked, answered, and debated for a long period of time. But when I look at New Hampshire,
Quickly.
Trump lost, but the rest of the state went very red. So I'm good with New Hampshire's electoral process.
All right, fair enough.
Thank you.
We're going to go now to a question that comes from our student reporter from the New Englander on-campus newspaper, Sub Sabitsky. Has something of a very topical nature a lot of people are talking about, and this is going to be directed to you, Mr. Levasseur, first.
Thank you.
2 high school students and teachers were killed in Georgia yesterday by a young teenager with an assault rifle. There has been more than 320 mass shootings this year. Pew Research found about 6 in 10 U.S. adults favor stricter gun laws. Would you support a law allowing federal courts to issue extreme risk protection orders to prohibit an at-risk individual from purchasing and owning firearms?
Come to find out today, the person that went to that school and shot up those poor victims was on an FBI list. Where are we dropping the ball on these issues? Why are we dropping the ball on these issues? It seems that every single shooting that we've seen, the warning signs were always there, and people didn't pay attention, or they just pushed it aside, and we end up with these tragedies. I am a strong pro-Second Amendment Republican. I believe in our right under the Second Amendment that our rights shall not be abridged, and I think it should stay that way. And if there's a situation where somebody has apparent mental illnesses issues, that we should be able to go to court and take a look at that and let a judge look at those type of issues and make a decision on whether or not they are capable of having a handgun or a weapon, just like we do in many other cases. Domestic assault, domestic violence, stalking orders. When those things are brought in front of the courts will take away their guns until they prove that they are, they can be taken away for a long time. So there are there are things like that put in place in the courts.
Would you support the federal law that would impose a extreme risk protection order?
I think that we should be leaving these kinds of questions up to the states, and I think the states should be dealing with those.
All right. Ms. Novoletsky.
As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, I really believe that this is a mental health issue. Many people are at risk of mental health issues, and we need to shore up our mental health providers and access. This person who shot yesterday, Riley, I believe his name, he sought help. He was identified, according to his aunt, asked for help. We need to make sure that they have the help available. The problem with red flags and a federal registry is there is no due process to get off that. We need to look at due process. We can't take law-abiding citizens and put them at risk of losing their right to bear arms if we don't have a due process to get them off. So I would not support it.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Chris Bright on this. Same question.
Yeah, as a father of 4 kids, 3 out of 4 of them are here today. It scares me what goes on in schools and the threat of gun violence. But the Second Amendment is an insurance policy against a tyrannical government. And I've seen that. In fact, when I was in Bosnia, 16 years before I was there, they hosted the Winter Olympics. So it's naive to think that this government can't fall in on itself or that governments of other countries can suddenly steamroll the rights of individuals. We're starting to see it here in this country. So stuff like what happened yesterday breaks my heart, but that's a symptom. And I don't believe that taking the guns away solves the core issues. Mental health is at the core of what's going on with these types of issues. And to the other candidates' points, that was discovered before. They were on an FBI watch list. And to Holly's point, he was crying for help, as reported by his aunt. We need to be treating and looking for these individuals and then helping them get the help they need. And solving this problem is not a binary solution where it's either take the guns away or not. And I'm not willing to trade the ability and the rights of Americans to solve the problem, the mental health problem, on the gun side.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McFarland.
What happened was a tragedy, and one we're all getting tired of seeing for sure. I'm a gun owner, and I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to defend yourself, the right to pass on a tradition of hunting to your family. But certainly, a grandmother should be able to go to a grocery store. A child should be able to go to school, and a former president should be able to go to a political rally without being the victim of gun violence. We have smart people in this country, and we have to figure out a way to protect my right to bear arms, but your right to feel safe. And certainly having that conversation, a sensible conversation, is not violative of the Second Amendment. It's simply recognizing that we live in common society with each other, and we have to find a solution. But to some of the other candidates' points, there are often red flags in these situations, things that were noticed, things that weren't handled properly, things that we have to get better at picking up on and addressing. So I would not yet be a supporter of that federal ban, but we have to make sure that our agencies are communicating well with one another, that we're doing the proper steps with mental health. The amount of mental health issues we're having from 8 years old to 14-year-old in this country is very disturbing, and we have to do something about it before we have more of these issues.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. Finally, Mr. Prescott.
This is always a very emotional problem. We have children being struck by people that are misusing our rights, as the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. We have to have complete self-responsibility to be able to have less gun violence. And we need to be able to keep track of our own arms, make sure that they're not in any harm's way of getting into somebody's hands, and we have to be aware of our family and our friends and how they're behaving and try and be as much of a role model as possible to keep them out of trouble. That's a core responsibility of community, and that's why we always need less control from the federal government and more control locally so we can direct help where it's needed. That's why I defend always law enforcement is really our local, police are really who really take care of our safety here at home and always back them.
And Mr. Prescott, moving on to our next question. AARP New Hampshire, by the way, is a sponsor of the Live Free or Die debates. So we thank them for that, and they asked me to convey the following question to the candidates. Again, Mr. Prescott, Social Security Trust Fund is expected to see a shortfall in the next 10 years. What do we need to do? What can we do in Congress to make sure that we keep our promise to taxpayers?
What we did when I got into the state Senate twice after defeating Maggie Hassan, we had a budget deficit. That was the biggest problem that faced New Hampshire at the time. We had to weigh what the needs of our state were with the wants and able to cut out the wants to be able to lower our spending so that we could balance the budget without raising taxes. That is what is missing in Washington, D.C. If we were able to balance a budget of 1% of the GDP here in 1 year in New Hampshire, we should be able to do at least that on the federal level, which is more of a bloated government than our state government, for sure. That is the kind of experience that I bring to the table to make sure that gets done. And I know that us as Republicans, this is our wheelhouse. We must be fiscal conservatives and follow through. And that is what I have always done as a state senator, and I will do as your congressman.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Novoletsky, how do we keep Social Security solvent for next generation?
We need to make sure that we cover those people who have been paying into the system. We owe it to them, and it's their money that they put into it. Two things we need to do. We need to cut spending. We need to cut this excess spending, such as Ukraine, sending money there, spending money for illegal immigration. We need to get down our spending so that we can bring down our interest, and we also need to become energy independent, increase our energy production, and become an exporter, and use that money towards shoring up Social Security. Between cutting spending and increasing the budget, we can do that. But we need to make sure that we take care of those who have paid in.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lavasser.
I misspoke before. It's not shall be abridged. It's shall be infringed. I really hate making a mistake that big. I could go on this question for a week. What we could do is we could just print more money. We just gave a private union $36 billion, the Teamsters, a private union, not a government union. They printed that money. They got it out of the ARPA funds. Manchester didn't know that we could apply for pension relief. We have pension issues here. The state of New Hampshire has pension issues too. So they just print money. How about instead we don't allow 10 million illegals to come into our country? How many resources are they taking? How much is that costing us? Billions and billions of dollars in EBT cards, billions and billions of dollars in welfare, billions and billions of dollars in housing support. All that money is going to people who haven't even paid a dime into our system. And they're taking away from our people, Americans, who some of them are in their 80s and 90s, have been working for 50, 60, 70 years of their lives, and they have to worry about this stuff. This is nonsense. This isn't the kind of stuff that should be going on in a country this big, this great, with so much money and so much power and corporate power. It's a shame and a pox on America that we even have to deal with an issue like this and talk about it. It will be funded because the politicians are so weak-kneed in Congress, they'll just print more money and just keep spending it and paying it off. It'll never, ever go away.
Mr. Bright, does cutting spending get us where we need to be on Social Security?
It's part of it. It's certainly a lever that you can pull on as opposed to energy independence. I don't know how that ties into Social Security. But look, if you dial down spending and there's more money to allocate towards this pension, then that is certainly something that you could fix. I almost think we have to relook Social Security for the next generation and not use the legacy system. So I would be in favor of kind of auditing the system that we have now to drive efficiency and not pull the rug out from people that have been paying into the system for their entire life. Get them through it and then start with the new generation of Americans and start to figure out a better system that could be sustainable, because the path we're on right now just doesn't work. To Joe's point, we're throwing a lot of money a lot of different places, doesn't seem to be the right spot. And we need to make sure that these seniors and these folks that have been propping this system up for their entire life still have a pension system for them when they hit retirement.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. McFarland.
Yeah, 4 in 10 seniors rely on Social Security for at least half of their income. So it's something we have to protect at all costs. But the system itself, to Chris's point, needs to be reevaluated, because for a society to stay at the same population that it has, you need 2.3 births per woman. And we're down to 1.7 as a country. So we're facing a situation where we're never going to have enough workers to pay into the system to pay out these benefits. So we have to look at something for the next generation, as Chris talks about. But for this generation, we've made a promise, and we have to make sure we fulfill that. Part of that promise is making sure our fiscal house is in order so that we can back up and support any shortfall in any program. So that's part of it for sure. But the other part is Social Security is a safety net. And for someone like me who's been blessed and been successful, and I don't need that safety net, maybe it's my patriotic duty to say, you know what? I don't need it, and I'm not going to take it, and leave it in the system for people who do, because it is a safety net. The one caveat to that being, if I ever fall on hard times and I've waived it, I say, you know what, I need it. It's a safety net, and I would be entitled to it at that point. But as an act of patriotism, Warren Buffett maybe shouldn't take his Social Security check.
You got to move on. Everybody have a chance to speak on Social Security? All right, let's go back to the panel. Jeff Chidester with the next one.
Currently, our immigration system has been described as broken, and many Americans are concerned about the influx of illegal immigrants that may have on the job. Let's go back to that. What the influx of the illegal immigrants may have on our job market, housing shortage, and national security. What policies are you prepared to support to address immigration?
Ms. Novoletsky.
I believe we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need to stop incentivizing illegal immigration. We need to stop having open borders. I'm the only candidate up here who's been to the northern border twice. And in this current fiscal year, which is not over yet, we've had 17,000 just come over the Swanton area. We need to stop this. We need to stop the catch and release. We need to have catch and deport, both on the northern border and the southern border. We need to have stay in Mexico and stay in Canada. We need to build the wall. But on the other hand, we need to open up legal immigration. We need to revamp legal immigration. I brought people over from overseas as workers, and it was a very difficult system. Over $10,000. It took over a year. It was a legal process that I had to prove that they had a bachelor's degree or more. We should make it skill-based. We should make it more easy for people to come here who want to be screened to be part of our community, and we should make it from countries who are friendly to us, as opposed to quota-based from certain countries.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's go to Mr. Bright on that. Immigration.
We can close immigration and we can close our border on day one. How do I know we can do that? Because it was happening under President Donald Trump. So we are setting ourselves up for another 9/11 style event. We know on the northern border that a disproportionate number of folks on an international terror watch list are coming over on our border. There are things that we can do on day one. So we can get back to rebuilding that wall, and that I'm not naive to think we're going to build a wall across our entire southern border. But as a military veteran, Corps of Engineers, I know that you can use walls and other types of obstacles to funnel people where you want them to go. So we can continue to funnel people and bring them into certain checkpoints, and we can augment the other parts of our border with technology. The Customs and Border Patrol, by their own account, is 2,800 people understaffed. We need to get them the people they need, and they need another 200 or 300 more people to help adjudicate some of these fictitious asylum claims. I would eliminate jus soli, which is the policy that if a child is born on American soil, they're automatically an American citizen. But I would argue if you're here illegally, and have a child born on American soil, that child is also illegal. So there are several policies that we can implement on day one to curb this absolute atrocity at our border.
Mr. McFarland.
Sure. Well, this is both a safety and a fairness issue, right? A country cannot be safe unless it knows who and what's coming across its border, and right now we don't. But it's also an issue of fairness. I met a gentleman named Mike in Goffstown the other day who went about coming to this country the right way, the legal way, and it took him years and years. So we have to remember that as well. As to how we tackle this problem, the first thing we have to do is send a signal that we are closed, that we're not open, so that it is clear to people coming here that are being basically lied to by the cartels and other sources that no, we're not open for business and you can't come in. We need more judges for asylum cases. We need more agents. We need more technology. We need to bring everything to bear that we can on this problem. We have to end catch and release. And then we also, as Holly was talking about, we need to make sure our legal immigration system matches the needs of our economy. What types of workers do we need at any one given time? And we need to tackle that problem. And lastly, I would just say this concept of we're going to go around and mass deport people, that is so crazy. We can't find them, we can't afford to move them, and our economy would really take a hit if we got rid of them. So we have to be sensible about what we're going to do, but also fair to the people that came here legally.
Mr. Lavasser.
God help us if we don't change out this administration. This administration allowed 10 million people across our borders, probably more. We don't know how many of them are criminals. We don't know how many are terrorists. You know, when Trump took office, the wall wasn't finished. He didn't finish it by the end of his 4 terms. We didn't have 10 million people come across our border. Biden gets in, wall hasn't been finished, 10 million come in. It's not by accident they were brought into this country. And whatever their reasons are, they've never explained them, and they never actually publicly came out and said, we need employees. We're not bringing them, they're coming in. Why are they coming in? And as far as deporting anybody, we start with the same model that Trump started with. The first group of people, well, you're right, we're never going to get rid of 10 million people. And I don't think this country would want that. But we start with the criminals. We start with people who came into this country with criminal backgrounds and the MS-19 gang members. And then we must deport people who come from another country illegally, where they've broken the law when they walked in. If they get caught breaking the law again in this country, you can't give them 3-4 years before they get a court date. They need to be taken out of the country immediately. Send a message to these people that we're not going to accept criminal behavior. That's the start. And we could go on for another hour about this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Prescott.
It's been said very many times before, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And I believe it so wholeheartedly. I've been running for 24 months to make sure that we can win and beat Chris Pappas this November by uniting the party around the positive messages of closing our border. And if we do not re-elect Donald Trump, more of the same is going to occur. By de facto, he is President Biden and then Vice President Harris. They will keep the borders open by executive order, not obey the Constitution. We must re-elect Donald Trump. We must defeat Chris Pappas this fall. And that's why I've been running for 24 months to get this job accomplished, calling everybody I know to unite the party together. We need to do that, and I'm here to tell you that I have that support from the independents, the libertarians, and all of those Gen Zers that are out there. They've been voting for me. They just want authenticity and proof that you can do the job. I have done the job. I will do it in Congress.
All right, time is flying. We'd like to squeeze in a couple more questions. So let's go to Melanie Plendo with the next one. And Mr. Prescott, you're up first.
Sure. The Democratic presidential nominee has proposed a housing plan focusing on creating new regulations and adding subsidies, including providing first-time homebuyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home. This will have a direct impact on New Hampshire's housing market. What role do you believe Congress has as it pertains to housing, and would you support a program such as the one being touted by the Democratic nominee? Why or why not?
If we follow Kamala Harris on this subject matter, we will have further inflation. It will always be out of reach to buy a home and to have a place to live and reach the American dream. Socialism does not work. Taking money from others just to give money back to a person that has not deserved it or earned it. It is a wrong idea. It is not an American ideal. The American ideal and the American dream is about working hard and making sure you can make it to the next level and make sure that you have your family behind you with all of the ingredients of the American dream is lower taxes, smaller government, and make sure you have political freedom without being a socialist country. And that's where Vice President Harris is trying to bring us to, is the wrong direction. I will not agree with anything that Vice President Harris brings forward.
Mr. Lavasser, same question to you.
Yeah, the party that drove up interest rates to 7% now wants to give you $25,000 to make up for what they did to the country by their ridiculous inflation over the last 4 years in spending. So they drove up interest rates so that people can't afford to get into a house at a reasonable market rate. And now they're going to give you $25,000. Nothing drives up the price of commodities more than subsidies. And so the $25,000 that they're going to give them 2 years later, they're going to forgive the loan. That's kind of the method that we're working with the Democrats. If you really, really want to get your people into homes, you drive down interest rates, you make sure your unemployment doesn't go up, and you make sure that people have good jobs. You give them a good economy. And that's what will take care of this. And, people want to move, but they can't move out of their 3s to go to a 7, right? We're all stuck in that kind of a little vacuum right now. Get those interest rates back down and stop just giving money away and then having another generation coming up, you Gen Zers, you're going to be in big doo-doo when another 10, 20 years of what's going on here. You're going to be stuck with all of the bills and all of the debt that these people down in Washington have created and won't stop giving you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bright?
Well, this is the problem with career politicians. When you put people in office who have no idea what the hell they're doing, then you get things like regulation and subsidies. Let's govern, let's hamstring free markets, and let's give out free money that we're going to pass on to other people. Those are elementary solutions to real hard world problems. Graduate degree from MIT. When I was there, I actually studied under Warren Buffett. I learned economy from some pretty powerful people. The housing market, when you boil it down, is a supply and demand issue. Period, end, stop. And you attack it by both of those reasons. You attack it from a supply perspective by deregulating. You create energy abundance. You deregulate, like what happened with the Keystone Pipeline, what happened with our wood. And instead of giving all Americans and rewriting student loan debt, what about investing in America's skilled labor, where the average age of skilled labor in this country is 55 years old? And for every 5 that retires out of a trade, only 1's coming in. Supply and demand problem. Get government out of free markets. They're not working.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McFarland?
This is refreshing, right? This conversation right here. And the reason it's refreshing is we're standing on a stage with 5 people that have owned businesses before. Not career politicians, people that actually, as Russ likes to say, sign both sides of a paycheck. And everything that has been said on this issue is correct. That's why I'm a small government guy. When government gets into a situation like this, they created the inflationary issue, which drove up the prices of homes and drove up mortgage rate costs, right? And then they say, okay, we have this huge problem we have to address. Now we have to give away this free down payment assistance, which is going to do nothing but increase the price of homes. So this is a government-created issue, and now at the back end of it, to try and solve it, they're coming in and putting a proposal together that would come right out of the taxpayer's pocket. It is insane. They caused the problem, and then they're taking money from us to fix the problem. It is a supply and demand issue. We need to work on the supply side and not create more demand.
And finally, Ms. Novoletsky, what's the role of Congress in the housing crisis?
So we need to remember that the federal government does not make money. They take money. They take taxpayer money. And to give this $25,000 to people who are struggling to make the deposit, they're going to struggle to make the continued payments. What we need to do is bring down the cost of housing and the cost of interest. We need to stop federal spending. We need to bring down the federal interest rate by reeling in the federal government. We also need to be energy independent, all forms of energy, including nuclear. Energy drives our economy. It drives transportation, it drives manufacturing, it drives the cost of goods, and it drives the kitchen table issues. And once the people are in these homes, they're going to need help on those kitchen table issues. So we need to be energy independent. And we also need to look at the building codes that have been put in place because of the Biden-Harris push for green energy in building. It has added $7,500 to about $30,000 per cost a house to add the green energy requirements. The return on investment is 35 to 75 years. That doesn't pay off.
And my apologies go to my good friend Kevin Landrigan, who drove all the way here to only ask one question. We're out of time. We got to get to our closing statements. I apologize, Kevin. Good to see you as always. We drew earlier for this. Let's start with Mr. McFarland.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Take 90 seconds.
I thought we were going in reverse order. My fault. Thank you, Josh. Thank you to New England College for having us here. It's wonderful that they allowed 5 of us up here so that the voters could make the decision on who should be their elected official, instead of a few gatekeepers keeping it down to a set number of debate stage people. I want to thank the moderators for their questions, the students for their questions, insightful questions that let us talk about the issues and let you see a comparison between us. I want to thank my fellow candidates. Notice I didn't say opponents, my fellow candidates. Doing this is hard. Running for office is hard. Putting yourself out there is hard. And while we disagree on some substance and definitely on style, I so respect the fact that you're all in the arena. So thank you. We have a choice. We can continue down the road we're going, where we send nothing but extreme people down to Washington, really conservative on this side, really liberal on this side, and they just yell at one another. We can continue down that path, or we can try a new path. We can once again send moderates back to Washington. People that can actually work together and get things done. People that will respect each other even if they disagree. Because if we continue down this road of divisiveness, I don't know where we end up. I don't know what the end game is. It doesn't matter how passionately we hold our conservative views. If we can't govern somehow by reaching across the aisle and finding consensus, you got to understand half the people on the other side hold dear to their liberal views too. So we can stagnate, or we can come together and find some way to bring down the cost of food for people in the Granite State, some way to bring down the cost of housing, some way to tackle the issues that matter to them. I'm someone that can win in November. I'm not someone that, as the last 3 cycles here in Congress, people have only gotten 46% of the vote and sent Chris Pappas back 3 times. I can actually win in November.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bright?
We got a fight on our hands. There are 33 federal seats between the House of Representatives and the Senate that represent New England. Republicans have 1, that's Susan Collins of Maine. If we don't start to get a seat back at the table, I'm fearful of the direction that this country will go in. So look, when I got in this race last October, I didn't just jump in this race a couple of weeks ago because I thought it would be cool to run for Congress. When I got in this race, I grinded. I went out, I talked to people, I hear the frustration, I hear the cynicism, and I've been there. I've served 2 combat tours. I'm not going to Washington, D.C. to better myself. In fact, this is a hit for me. It's a pay cut, takes me away from my kids, but I'm going because I am genuinely concerned about the direction that this country is going. And we don't have the leadership, the tested leadership, to get up there, stand in the storm, make alliances, and have the experience to figure out how to solve some of these problems. Some of these people that we put up here, they're politicians. They've been writing checks, they've been buying their way out of problems, or they've been making friends with a bunch of politicians. That doesn't get the job done. You need someone that knows how to fight, that can look at problems and figure out how to even start attacking those problems before you go about creating some solutions. It's going to take an outsider, and we need somebody new, not somebody that's been walking the halls of government for 25 years who created this mess. I hope I'll take your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Bright, thank you very much. Mr. Levasseur.
My name is Joseph Kelly Levasseur, LevasseurForCongress.com. I'm a Manchester born, raised individual who rose up from very poor circumstances, but had a good life, and was able to, because of this country, get an education, open a restaurant where I was told I would only last 6 months. 34 and a half years later, I finally retired. While I was owning a restaurant, I went out and got my master's degree in business, and I went and got my law degree. I own commercial property. I own real estate. I understand a lot of the problems that small businesses, homeowners, families go through every single day. I understand what it costs, how hard it is to pay bills. I understand energy costs. New Hampshire's energy costs are outrageous. You know, one of the best things, I'm very bullish on this country. I believe that we can turn things around very quickly. And I tell you why. In Manchester, the people in Manchester got so sick and tired of Joyce Craig's bad management of our city that for the first time since 1998, it elected a Republican board. We have 7 Republican aldermen and a Republican mayor. In 6 months, we've made a lot of changes to that city and moved forward from our homeless crisis and our drug crisis in our city. For the first time since 1998, we have a Republican chairman, me. We work hard, we work together, we have a tax cap. If you ever want to see something that's effective on governments, it's a tax cap. That controls spending. Manchester has it, and it's done a great job. Again, Joseph Kelly Lavasser, I thank you all for being here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Prescott.
Russell Prescott for Congress, please. I am a 30-year entrepreneur from a 70-year family business. I grew it from 10 employees to 50 employees by hard work, innovation. I'm an engineer. I have 7 patents. I find new ways to solve problems. It's what I did in Washington, what I will do in Washington. It's what I did at the State House. We stopped the income tax. We stopped the sales tax. We made New Hampshire the greatest state in the union because we're the safest and the freest. That's what we need. We need talent in Washington, D.C. We need proven leadership in Washington, D.C. I'm the prime sponsor of constitutional carry. Gun Owners of America gave me an A+ rating. I'm the prime sponsor of Right to Work. I carried the water for a lot of bills. I'm the one that made sure that parental notification got through the state Senate. I'm a pro-life candidate. Now, I need you, please, to consider this important race in November. The amount of support that I have around the state, Gen Zers, independents, and how I've earned the trust of libertarians. We need smaller government, and we need someone with a backbone to get it done. I've done this in the past, and it means so much to me. My family has been here for generations. My 8th great-grandfather left Raymond, New Hampshire, and went to the Battle of Bunker Hill. And he died for our country before we even had a Declaration of Independence. I will give my life for this state and this country, and that's why I've been running for over 2 years to make this happen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And the final word goes to Ms. Novoletsky.
Thank you very much. I believe we all on the stage agree that Chris Pappas needs to go. He has not represented us in this state. I sit on the board of the American Institute of Steel Construction, and several years ago we had a federal trade case against China, Mexico, and Canada for unfairly traded structural steel, and I reached out to our federal delegation, Pappas, Shaheen, and Hassan. I had to go to D.C. to see them. I flew to D.C., and I didn't get to see them. I saw their aides. We're not being heard. We're not being represented. Because of Chris Pappas and the Biden-Harris administration, we have unsecured borders with unprecedented illegal immigration. We have out-of-control inflation, and energy costs here in New England are out of control. We need to change things down in D.C. Career politicians have gotten us into this mess, and career politicians are not going to get us out of this mess. And some of our colleagues on this podium have been running for over 2 decades. We're not going to get any different. That's the true definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting something different. I've been boots on the ground for 2 decades, fighting for the American worker, fighting for Buy American, fighting for the American manufacturing. And I ask for your vote so that I can go down and continue to speak for the American worker so that they can make sure that they can address the kitchen table issues. I know somebody on this podium, Chris, insinuates that I was trying to buy American. Every penny I spent was for the American worker, and I put over $50,000 into Republican candidates. Buy American is very important to me. Buying votes is not.
Thank Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our timekeepers, our student reporter, Soup Sabitsky, of course, our panelists, but most of all, on behalf of New England College, thanks to the candidates for participating. You said it, Walter, it's not easy. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. And don't forget, tomorrow night we have the Democratic primary debate for the candidates for governor. What?
Good job. Good job.
And thank you for Beverly Bruce for giving me cough drops.